All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Black News Podcast. I'm here. This is going to be a pretty quick segment because the purpose of this segment is not to introduce any new material, but actually to issue a correction on some comments that I made in a segment that I did recently. Originally, what my instinct was to do was to just kind of reshoot the segment and make the corrections in there, and then delete the one that I basically had misinformation in. I said some things that weren't true, but I actually thought it would be more honorable in some sense, or more reflective of integrity, to leave the video that I had that has the mistake in it and just merely create another short video that comments on it, and then label it accordingly so that people know that those go together, and do my little YouTube magic to make sure that that video is always associated with the one in which I made the bad comments. They're relatively innocuous. I was just wrong, and then to a certain extent, I caught myself kind of speaking in ignorance. And I think that if I'm going to criticize other people who do the kind of thing that I'm now starting to do, other independent media figures, people like Kyle Kalinske, people like David Pakman, who's going to be implicated in this, then I should be able to criticize myself when I get it wrong. And so I'm doing that in an effort to demonstrate that I'm willing to do that and own up to my fuck ups. So I'm going to do that right now. So the segment that I did recently was a segment that was all about the recent news that Tulsi Gabbard had walked away from the Democrat Party. And in the course of talking about that, I had basically gave commentary on a segment that was covering the same topic by David Pakman. And David Pakman was basically watching the announcement video and then giving his commentary, and I was kind of giving a rebuttal commentary, let's say. And so in the context of that, kind of quasi-related, I mean, it makes more sense in context. I made some comments in passing that I came to discover pretty quickly were not true. And so I want to prioritize those comments. And specifically, what I said was something to the effect, and it's vague. I had watched it recently, but it's vague. Something to the effect of, I don't think that figures like Marjorie Taylor Green or Lauren Boebert have said that they wanted America to be a Christian nationalist state.
Not everybody understood that. Even some of my fellow leftists kind of fell for it. And she's been more and more outwardly moving to the right, speaking at CPAC, the extreme right wing convention.
CPAC is an extreme right wing convention. It's a right wing convention. I don't know what's extreme about it. I mean, there's left wing conventions. Are they extreme? Maybe. Okay. I guess that just seemed like an ad hoc for no real reason. I don't think he can back that up at all. But I do think that he's given commentary where he's tried to make it. He's tried to give some credence to what I think is just a vapid ad hom, pointing out certain figures at CPAC who've said things that he attributes, to the Q people and conspiratorial things and all that kind of stuff. Baseless accusations that people want a Christian nationalist state. I think that the no good, very bad, evil Republicans, as he and other leftists have come to think of them, make all kinds of appeals to this being God's country and this is a Christian nation and stuff like that. And up until about a few years ago, Democrats used to do that too, so it's kind of normal. But the progressives don't really have an appetite for it or tolerance for it anymore. Because their whole kind of framing of things is that they're in some sense like anti-religious. They don't think that, or at the very least, they don't think that religion should have any sway over our politics whatsoever. And to a certain extent, I understand that because we're supposed to be living in a secular society, separation of church and state, all that kind of stuff. And you do have people like Lauren Boebert who has said outwardly that the separation of church and state thing, in some sense, she's voiced that she clearly doesn't like that. And I've spoken with conservative types recently who are in that vein. They think that there's something detrimental about taking God out of everything. And they think, that this nation would be better if it would recognize, I guess, as a Christian nation. And so you take those kinds of comments here and there by people like those figures, which those are actual comments that they have made, And you can run with that like really, really far and fearmonger about it and go, see what they want is a Christian nationalist state. Like, I don't know if that's the best conclusion to draw from that, but they clearly do want God and their conception of what's good from a Christian lens put back into things in our society, in our government, etc. I would even give them pushback. I wouldn't pretend like they want a Christian nationalist state. That's stupid. But I would give them pushback and be like, nah, this is a secular country, fam. Like, there's a reason for the separation of church and state. And I don't want to have to force people to live by your Christian values. So I would agree with the leftists slightly. I just wouldn't get over the top with the fear mongering on it, but whatever.
Who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality.
And again, it's not hostility to people of faith or spirituality. It's hostility to imposing that faith or spirituality on civil government. It's about openly, as Marjorie Taylor Green and Boebert and all of them have said, saying we are Christian nationalists and that should be enshrined in civil law.
I don't think they've ever said we are Christian nationalists, but I do think that he's right. Boebert, he means Lauren Boebert. I do think that he's right that Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Green have said things that suggest that what their conception for the country is that we put God back into everything. That this is God's country. They do use rhetoric like that. And it's kind of a lot of GOPers historically have used rhetoric like that. And again, Democrats used to say shit like that too, but it's not cool anymore. So I don't think they say it as much, unless they're old dinosaurs. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's exaggerate. It's an exaggeration to say that they're Christian nationalists. And actually, I think the use of that rhetoric isn't accidental. Ironically, to kind of use his point against him, I think that rhetoric calls to mind something akin to, like Nazis and stuff like that, which is the kinds of associations that that these people want to maintain when it comes to people of the GOP. I don't think that Tulsi Gabbard is a Nazi in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think that the vast majority of people in the GOP are Nazis or even Nazi light or Nazi like or even Nazi adjacent. I don't think Trump was a Nazi, but there are people who to this day will say he was literally Hitler, which is stupid because he couldn't literally be another person, law of identity and whatnot. But I think what they mean is that he's so Hitler-like that it makes sense to say as even a mild hyperbole that he's literally Hitler. Even though it doesn't. But yeah, like I get that impetus for that kind of language or rhetoric, but like it doesn't seem like it's true like at all. But I guess I don't know, if you sip the Kool-Aid long enough, I guess you can convince yourself of that.
That's wrong. That's not constitutional.
But he's right. So the substance of what he's saying that I agree with, and I agree with it earlier, is that I actually would agree with him. I don't think that that any religion and religious presuppositions should be imposed on the rest of the country. We're not a theocracy. So I get that. I actually that's actually like a core liberal principle that I actually agree with. And I would hope that the woke-tards don't deviate from anything like that ever. And it turns out that indeed Marjorie Taylor Green did say exactly that. And I was just unaware at the time when I made that comment. So again, I was speaking in ignorance. I got that wrong. And I quickly, after a cursory Google search, it didn't even take that long. So this is kind of more embarrassing because I could have easily researched this before I made my comment. But Marjorie Taylor Green did say that. And I'm going to show you the clip in which she said it right now. And to add insult to injury, David Pakman had actually covered the footage I'm about to show you on his show. So I'm going to show you that David Pakman, who I criticized for basically saying, I basically said that he was wrong to say that. He actually was right, and he had backed it up in another segment that I had not seen until about a day after I had made the comments. So this is me issuing a correction. I want to be honest about it. I want to own up to it. I fucked up. I got it wrong, and hopefully I'm getting it, I'm getting it right now. So let's start with the interview in which Marjorie Taylor Green did say that she specifically, verbatim almost, that she wanted America to be or that she espouses Christian nationalism, or she wanted America to be a Christian nationalist state. You can hear it directly from her words right now. Take a look.
Taylor Hansen here with Next News Network, and I am here with the one and only beautiful Marjorie Taylor Green. Say hello to everyone, Marjorie.
Oh, hi everyone, and I'm happy to be here with you, Taylor.
So I just have a few questions for you today. First off being, what do you think is the primary focus of the GOP going into 2022? What should it be opposed to what it is?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question because there's a lot of things that should be. I think Republicans really need to recognize the people they represent, okay, their voters, not the lobbyist donors, not the corporate PACs, not those people. That's not who the Republican Party should represent. We need to be the party of nationalism, and I'm a Christian and I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists. And when Republicans learn to represent most of the people that vote for them, then we will be the party that continues to grow without having to chase down certain identities or chase down certain segments of people. We just need to represent Americans, and most Americans, no matter how they vote, really care about the same things. And I want to see Republicans actually do their job. That's
Absolutely.
what I want to see.
It'd be crazy, right? First time in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we might continue to hold power.
Might have a heart attack. Woo.
Yeah.
So another question for
All right,
you.
so there you have it. You saw and heard Marjorie Taylor Green from her own mouth say that she basically thinks that America should be that Republicans specifically should be Christian nationalists. She used that term verbatim. So that is not something that is being misattributed to Marjorie Taylor Green. She actually said those words. I wrongly said that I didn't think that she ever said that. Clearly, that's not the case. You heard it from her mouth directly. So now what I want to do is I want to go back to address what David Pakman's coverage was, because he basically backed up his claims, and he didn't show this footage in the context of what I was criticizing, but he did back up his criticism, and he had levied criticisms against I think what he's framing as the right wing push for Christian nationalism. And it's definitely something that Marjorie Taylor Green is pushing for. It's definitely something that she's advocating that other Republicans do. And it definitely, in the context of that interview, sounds like there's at least some other people who want that because they feel that there's nothing really inherently problematic about it. It's an interesting question to unpack what they think, and I think I'm still going to end up disagreeing with David Pakman's characterization of it. But one thing is for certain, I was wrong in saying that Marjorie Taylor Green didn't say it. She clearly did say it, and so David Pakman, it was at least right on that front. So I want to show some David Pakman footage of the coverage, and then I'll probably stop it and start it again to comment on it. Here we go.
And the Republican Party now is overtly Christian nationalist. They're straight up saying, we're sick of this separation of church and state stuff. We're sick of all of it. But I want to give you another data point in this today before we do our bigger story on it tomorrow. Marjorie Taylor Green, among others, spoke at the Turning Point USA event over the weekend. We're going to look at more clips of this. We'll look at Trump's speech and Don Jr.'s speech and Lauren Boebert saying, I never was an escort. I never was a prostitute.
So real quick, he keeps pronouncing Lauren Boebert's name as Boebert. And because I was wrong last time, I'm actually starting to doubt. Like, is that how she pronounces her name? I thought it was Boebert. I thought that's how she pronounces her own name. I don't know if it's pronounced Boebert. And I don't know if I'm mispronouncing it, or if he's mispronouncing it accidentally, or if he's trying to be coy or be funny in some way. There was this kind of weird vibe in the other thing that I covered by him where he kept pronouncing Tulsi Gabbard's name as Tulsi Gabbard, and I genuinely couldn't tell if he was just mispronouncing it or if he was like trying to be funny by like implying that she's a tool or something. So just side comment. It's not really much to do about nothing. I'm just I don't know. Him mispronouncing names bugs me in a way that it probably shouldn't. It has nothing to do with what I'm trying to do right now, but I couldn't help but point that out. But here we go.
For Ted Cruz, really weird event. But before we get into that in more detail, there was this one moment where Marjorie Taylor Green said, Christian nationalism is great. That's what we need. Let's take a look at this video clip and then we'll discuss.
Perfect. It just means we're doing the right thing. And I think that's what the Republican Party needs to be about.
Huh.
I'm a Christian. How many Christians do we have here? So you see, I also call myself a Christian nationalist. And that's not a bad word. That's actually a good thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with leading with your faith, because we should lead with our faith. Because if we're doing that, then we're doing the right thing. It doesn't mean we're perfect. It just means we're doing the right thing.
So she says that that's what the Republican Party should be about. Now, Christian nationalism is not just we happen to be Christian and we like the United States or whatever. Christian nationalism means you believe United States as a nation is defined by Christianity. Government should be actively keeping the United States a Christian nation. The United States government should be imposing or prioritizing or giving preference to Christianity. Christianity should be the doctrine, a prescriptive doctrine for how the government runs, and you're sort of breaking down separation of church and state. This is not unique to Marjorie Taylor Green, that the belief that Christianity should be privileged in the public square. Remember, we've looked at clips of Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert openly is calling for the same thing now.
And I believe that great patriots all throughout this nation and Christians will begin to position themselves in these days, in these times, that pastors would have a boldness to speak from the pulpit of their churches, to direct and inform the church on how to influence the direction of government.
So that's pretty full on. And if that's not direct enough for you, here she was saying she's tired of this separation of church and state stuff. We looked at this about a month ago when it took place.
The reason we had so many overreaching regulations in our nation is because the church complied. The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
Now, I've told you before that she's wrong. In fact, when they say it was in a stinking letter, what they're trying to do is minimize the idea, the desire for separation of church and state, to like an offhanded, casual letter written by Thomas Jefferson. That's what Lauren Boebert wants you to believe. She wants you to believe it's all a big mistake. There was no actual desire for separation of church and state. Thomas Jefferson sort of mentioned it in one letter and that's it. But the reality is that were they deists or not, were they Christians or not, the founding fathers very clearly recognized, and it's established in the Constitution, that there should be no prioritization of one religion over another, nor of religion over non-religion in the United States. It's abundantly clear. The fact that we're going back to that, one of the things Republicans love to do is they don't just want to go back to the 1950s. They also want to go back to debates that have been long settled and that anybody who takes them seriously realizes there actually is no debate about. And this is extraordinarily dangerous. So we're going to talk.
All right. Sorry, I let a lot of that play because some of that footage I was actually watching for the first time. So a couple things I want to reiterate. The whole point of this video was to issue my correction. I falsely, unbeknownst to me at the time, but falsely stated that Marjorie Taylor Green never ever said that she wanted people to be Christian nationalists, or she never espoused Christian nationalists explicitly. That's wrong. And that's obviously wrong. I showed you the footage that I thought he was going to show, but he ended up showing other footage, which just doubly confirms what he's saying. I do think that there's still going to be slight disagreement because he seems to be trying to attribute this position, which is not explicitly, well, at least in the footage he showed, has not been explicitly expressed by Lauren Boebert. However, he has established that it is plausibly consistent with the actual words that she said, that she wants something like what Marjorie Taylor Green likes. And it also makes sense just kind of loosely because they're kind of similar figures and they're kind of aligned in the kinds of things that they want. So if Marjorie Taylor Green is outspoken about it, Lauren Boebert, who may be less outspoken about it, it would make sense if Lauren Boebert wanted something like that. Lauren Boebert's words, though, are consistent with a charitable interpretation whereby she doesn't necessarily mean that that the dictates of the Bible or religions that she subscribes to, or religious presupposition that she subscribes to, should dictate what things, the law of the land. Her words are also consistent with there being an influence, and in fact, she used the term influence to be charitable to her. Now, what I also ended up saying, and I'm going to show footage in a second, in that clip that I'm issuing a correction for, was that ultimately, and on the substance of that last point, that we should maintain separation of church and state, I actually agree with David Pakman. It's a kind of classical liberal principle that I think I espouse. And so I would, to whatever extent that they actually mean what David Pakman is attributing to them, and again, it's plausible that they actually mean that, I would not be in alignment with them at all. I think I would be vehemently against them for most of the same reasons that David Pakman is. So I'm going to go ahead and let this finish David Pakman's segment, because he did cover it. But I do want him to kind of finish his thought and make sure that to whatever extent it's relevant to my correction, that I get it in here. So here goes.
Tomorrow on the show about the decidedly Christian nationalist move of the Republican Party. Not everybody in the Republican Party agrees with it. I mean, someone like Adam Kinzinger, he doesn't agree with it. He's also retiring and is kind of increasingly irrelevant within the party. But even Trump now is regularly at his rallies, and we might look at the clip later, saying we kneel only before God, and all of these different sort of signals to the Christian nationalists. So this is a very dangerous movement in particular, because if they do well in November and then they control the 2024 election, there are all sorts of ways in which they can impose this Christianity in the public square, completely antithetical. I mean, without a doubt, completely antithetical to what the framers wanted. So we will talk about it more. And in the meantime, you can send me your thoughts by finding me on Twitter at DPAC.
Okay, so there it goes. I do think that there is, I do think that there's still some grounds to suspect that David Pakman might be jumping a little bit to conclusions. However, what I do think is the most pronounced difference between what I thought before and what I think now, given that I've found the evidence that I didn't have before, is that at least his accusations are a lot more plausible than I originally thought that they were. And so I don't think that he's flying off the hinges. I think that within reason, his, let's say, anticipation that the Republicans who espouse the same sentiments as Marjorie Taylor Green and Lauren Boebert in the footage that he showed and the footage that I showed, are going to try, in some sense, perhaps indirectly, but in some sense, to foist upon a significant part of the non-Christian population a whole bunch of Christian dictates. And that would be wrong to whatever extent that they try to do that. I think that I would just broadly agree. I don't think that any religion, Christianity included, should be foisted on other people, be it in and I got to be careful, because there's all kinds of ways with which values that start from a certain kind of sets of theological presuppositions can find their ways to be inculcated in our society that I think would actually be valid. But there's a whole bunch of ways where I think that they would not be valid. And so there's a kind of trickiness here. I want to be attentive to nuance that I barely understand. And I also want to avoid saying things that are false again, so I have to issue more corrections. So you have people who operate from a sense of conscience, and a lot of people's conscience is informed by their religious presuppositions, and they have every right to do that. There's no law prohibiting a person's conscience being informed by religious presuppositions. In fact, part of the freedoms that we are all entitled to is the freedom to do precisely that. So you have to maintain that freedom while also not transgressing on the freedom of non-religious believers to have their conscience informed by other things outside of, or sometimes even in contravention to, the religious presuppositions of other people in the countries that they share. And so that's kind of the source of the tension. And where to draw the lines is actually not very clear, to be fair. Now, if you're a non-believer in this, I assume David Pakman's not. I'm not really that religious, although I used to be. So I kind of have, I think, an understanding or some insight into what believers kind of want and believe, generally, not universally. And I kind of understand the psychology of a religious believer in terms of the relationship between their values and their religious presuppositions. It's going to be hard to legislate away that relationship, in the same way that it would be very, very difficult for an atheist or perhaps a more secular person who nonetheless still has all kinds of moral values that are informed by all kinds of things, both social, secular, humanist, etc., well, ideological as well. Like that relationship is like hard to govern, and it kind of it's really a matter of conscience. And so I don't know how you single out religious beliefs and religious presuppositions and go, those can inform your values, but other things that are not religious can inform your values, right? Like I don't know how you legislate that. I don't know how you regulate that. And David Pakman, to be fair to him, is not calling for that. But what I'm trying to articulate is that problem, that the inability to in some sense do away with that relationship when it comes to how it applies to religious believers is going to make it hard to distinguish between the attempts for people who start with those presuppositions to politic in a certain way where their values, which are related to and informed by their theological presuppositions, are inculcated in various different laws in various different domains of society, versus them being guilty of the transgression that David Pakman's talking about, which is they're basically foisting their religious beliefs on the rest of the country. That's a tricky thing to distinguish between. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Hopefully I did a good job of issuing my correction, and hopefully I'll do a better job of doing my research beforehand before I give commentary, so that I don't have to keep giving these corrections, because they're going to get old pretty fast. I always do them if I feel that they're necessary, if I make a big enough blunder. But yeah, so that's my correction, and I have one more coming up in just a second. Until next time, peace. What's up, people? Welcome back to the Black Muse Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Muse, aka the Black Muse. I'm here for another correction that I have to issue, because I said some things on one of my recent podcast segments that was not true. I covered the blunder that I made about Marjorie Taylor Green in another segment, but this one I want to focus on some comments that I made in passing in that same episode in relation actually to Stacey Abrams. And also Gavin Newsom. But what's weird is that she's not even joining the GOP. Wouldn't you expect her to join the GOP if that's what she's positioning herself to do, like in some weird dog whistly message? Like, she's been on Fox News, but a lot of progressive types have been on Fox News. Fucking what's her name? Stacey Abrams went on Fox News not too long ago to try to make her case and make and make it seem like she hasn't been lying all this time about denying election results, which she has. I might put that shit in post. But like, all kinds of left-leaning figures are brave enough to go on Fox News and try to make their case for whatever reason. I think Gavin Newsom was on Fox News not too long ago. Just because you go on Fox News doesn't mean, but he was, but okay. But to be fair, to Steelman a little bit, she was way more chummy with the people on Fox News than Stacey Abrams, who was way more antagonistic, and Gavin Newsom was way more antagonistic. And so if you go on Fox News and you're a person on the left, you have to be really antagonistic to kind of show your loyalty. And if you're too chummy, then you might get accused of, sleeping with the enemy, so to speak. And she's also been very chummy with, and what's different about her, and he mentioned this before, to be fair to him, is that she replaced Tucker Carlson on Tucker Carlson Tonight one time. So she got kind of special favoritism and special treatment. And so that kind of demonstrates that, like, she's really, really chummy with those people. So there's something there that I think is substantive. There's a substantive difference between her just appearing on Fox News, to be fair. But it doesn't mean that she's in the GOP, though. like independents can do whatever the fuck they want. It's kind of like a perk of being independent. You don't have to be like, there's no pressure on you to have like forced antagonism just to virtue signal to your fucking base. Otherwise they'll turn on you because they'll start accusing you of all kind of baseless shit, like Pakman is accusing her of, because that's what happens on the left. Now it happens on the right too. Right wingers accuse people on their side of all kind of shit, not really caring for the country. Think about the way that they did Liz Cheney, the way that they talk about rhinos and shit like that, all of that shit, the number Trumpers. So it happens on the right too, but the left, it seems like it's like the rule. It's like way more common though. But the thing that I want to hone in on that I said that was wrong is that um, I said that Gavin Newsom had been interviewed on Fox News. I actually did a Google search to try to prove that or verify that. I think I used the phrase. I kind of qualified it. I said I think that Gavin Newsom. So I get some credit, I guess, for that. But I ended up being wrong even with that supposition. I don't think Gavin Newsom at this point. I don't think Gavin Newsom has ever been on Fox News. And so, as a cursory evidence that I have to show, is this Google search where I tried to find those interviews and I could not find them. And I went all the way, through these to try to find them. Gavin Newsom has been talked about on Fox News a lot, but I don't know that Gavin Newsom has ever been interviewed on Fox News, like even once. If he has and y'all have that footage, I would love to see it. But the footage that I thought that I remembered was a combination of a couple of things that I misremembered. It was one, the Five had reacted to Gavin Newsom's ad that was ripping Ron DeSantis. And then there was this little guy here about rolling blackouts that features Tommy Lahren. And I could have sworn in both or at least one of those that Gavin Newsom actually was featured live on the air interacting with them. But I just misremembered that for some reason. So I got to issue that correction. I don't know that Gavin Newsom has ever gone on Fox News, and I don't know why he would, because I think that would be a setup. I think that would be a trap, because they don't seem to like Gavin Newsom all that much on Fox News, and they seem to be dedicated pretty zealously to making him look as bad as possible for in their minds the terrible job he's doing in the state of California running things. So there's that correction. It wasn't that big of a deal in terms of the ultimate points that I was trying to make. I think the point that I was trying to make in context was that just because a Democrat like Tulsi Gabbard goes on Fox News, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're pro-Republican. And so I cited Gavin Newsom, which was a bad example because I don't think he's ever been on there. But I also cited Stacey Abrams, which is a better example because at the very least, Stacey Abrams has actually been on Fox News. And she was on there recently, so I did remember that correctly.
I want to ask you, especially before you go, about abortion. You've made headlines on that topic lately. You're not the only one. Kanye West, or Ye, talking to our Tucker Carlson this week, had this to say.
I care about the fact that there's more black babies being aborted than born in New York City.
The most recently available data from New York City's Department of Health seems to support what he's saying there. But more broadly, according to the CDC, about 38% of abortions were obtained in the U.S. by black women. The U.S. Census Bureau, though, says that just 13.6% of our population is black. Do you share Ye's concern that black Americans are disproportionately impacted, he says, by abortion?
I share the concern of women across the state of Georgia that they are being denied access to medical care. That in the state of Georgia, black women are most likely to die of maternal mortality issues because they're denied access to health care under this governor before they get pregnant. They are denied access to medical care during their pregnancy because of the medical shortage that we have in the state of Georgia, fomented by this governor. That when they have this child, if they choose to carry a child to term, if they're even allowed the choice of what they want to do, that postpartum, they are denied access to health care afterwards. We know that in Brian Kemp's Georgia, a black woman faces a lethal choice, and that is to either have a crystal ball and know she's pregnant before she can actually know, or face forced pregnancy with very little support. In the state of Georgia, Brian Kemp has said that Herschel Walker is entitled to his personal choices, but no woman is. And that is unconscionable. And for black women in particular, but women writ large, the right to control our bodies, the right to our medical care should be sacrosanct. And unfortunately, unless I replace Brian Kemp, there will be a desert of access for black women across the South. Georgia will be the only state, if I become governor, we will be the only state from Texas to South Carolina where women can have access to care. That's 56% of the black population of the United States centered in the South and denied access to life-saving medical care. And so I'm going to fight as hard as I can to protect the right to abortion, because that's how we protect the rights of women, and that's how we protect the rights of Georgians.
Were you to become governor, where would you draw the line? 15 weeks, viability, 36 weeks? What's the limit?
What I've always said is that abortion is a medical decision that should be made by a doctor and the woman. and that the point of viability as determined by a doctor should always take into consideration the life and health of a woman. That should be the standard. But the arbitrary standards of timelines ignore the medical reality that it is a fallacy. We know exactly when a pregnancy starts, that we know exactly where we are in the system, in the term, and what doctors will tell you is that they need to make decisions based on the woman they are treating, and what women will tell you is that they need the right to make medical decisions that can save their lives and save their ability to control their bodies and their futures.
Leader Abrams, we thank you for the conversation this morning. We hope you'll come on again soon.
I'd be honored to. Thank you so much.
But I do want to say that the point that I was making was just because if you're a Democrat and you go, or you're on the left and you lean left and you go on Fox News to challenge, the no good, very bad, evil Republicans, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go with them. Now, there was a key difference that I even acknowledged in that context, which was Tulsi Gabbard is way more chummy than people like Stacey Abrams when they go on Fox News, for sure. But I think it's just because they're more moderate, and so there's no real need. And also because Tulsi's really just an independent who was kind of under the Democrat umbrella. Bernie Sanders was once an independent. They made him kind of swear allegiance to the Democrat Party in order, to maintain I guess allegiances long enough for him to run for president more than one on both occasions that he ran in both 2016 and 2020. But I think for the more moderate independent types, they're more willing to go on Fox News generally because they're more willing to engage with Republicans or conservatives generally. And a lot of them are willing to do that, not just because of their politics, but some of them because their constituents are mixed. You can think about somebody like the senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin. He's a great example of this kind of thing. I've seen him go on Fox News. I believe, don't quote me on that now, I'm going to say with a little less confidence, a little less bass in my voice, but I'm pretty sure he went on Fox News a couple of times and was live on the air with them. So Tulsi Gabbard being chummy doesn't even necessarily mean that she's with the GOP, because those are other examples. Now, for a certain kind of progressive, those examples are all going to be examples of people that they would say are right-leaning Democrats, whatever that means. But I guess the simple idea is that they're not progressive enough for their taste, and so they kind of lump them in with the no good, very bad, evil Republicans. Okay, points for consistency, I guess, but they're clearly Democrats, and they're clearly not in the Republican Party. Tulsi Gabbard has officially not switched to the GOP. Tulsi Gabbard is officially an independent. I gave evidence for that. So despite those corrections, the ultimate point that I think I was making is still preserved. And I just want to make sure that I'm not misinforming people. And to whatever extent that I do, that I'm willing to, kind of own up to it. So that's my second correction. Hopefully, and if I find any other corrections that need to be had in terms of things that I say on my show, I'll be more than willing to do that. So that's the end of that. Until next time, peace.